Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. I'm your host, Victor Rigoli, and I'm down here at Triangle Arts, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Rick Geyer earlier, and now my special guest, the one and only Melissa Kelsey. She's with me in the studio, I guess you'd call it. We're on site down here at Triangle, and I got to meet you last week. And I just wandered down here. I'd heard about this place, actually found out about it online, and I said I'd seen something about Triangle before, and I said, I need to find out. See, I'm down in Warren Robins, so I said, okay, where's the address? And I said, hey, I'm coming up here, and I've been up and down this road before, because when I worked at Geico, I used to get off at Eisenhower, swing around, and go down 7th, and because I was bypassing the 1675, construction. Oh, I hated
That's
it.
right.
So I found an alternate route. So I was familiar with this area already, but and then of course I grew up in Macon, so Macon's my kind of hometown. But anyway, it was a pleasure just kind of chat with you and getting to know you a little bit. I said I'm going to interview her, and she said, "Well, first person you're going to interview is Rick." And so we just did an interview with Rick. So check out that interview, folks. But Melissa, tell me your artist story. Tell me about how you create art, what kind of art you create, how long have you been doing art, and creating things, and maybe your role here at Triangle.
Sure. First and foremost, pleasure to have met you, Victor.
Thank you.
Last week, and joining with you today, and me personally, I feel like this is just the start of a beautiful friendship.
Yes,
so
most definitely.
thank
most
you
definitely.
for that.
Yeah.
My artist story goes back to my recollection pretty far back. I'll never forget. I was 6 years old.
So you had a crayon when you came out? When
I
you
came
were born,
right. It was like right in my head.
Right,
like
yeah.
I don't want
Little
to
paintbrush. Yeah.
Right. When I was 6, first grade, I asked for a typewriter for Christmas.
That's unusual.
It is very unusual.
Okay.
My mom's like, you don't.
So
want
you
to
did some
borrow it?"
writing, maybe
I
early
did.
on,
And I typed this 4-page front and back poem when I got that typewriter, and I still
at
have
6
it.
years old.
Yes, and I still have it.
Wow.
And from there, I was like, something's a little different.
Yeah.
I already
yeah.
knew because,
Yeah.
when growing up in school, I
Yeah.
was not like other kids, but that definitely let me know you're a little odd. And I've grown into embracing.
What you saying about artists? We're not.
Hey.
Yeah.
But from there, I just always had a knack for drawing and artistry. My father was an artist.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people don't know that, and he
wow.
doesn't promote that. He went to school for art,
Really?
to college for art. So,
Really?
So in more recent years, he's kind of opened up more about some of his art.
Really?
I've seen some of his things. I'm like, I didn't know that was yours.
Mm-hmm.
So very interesting, and it's kind of hereditary. My brother's an amazing artist. He just does not practice like he should.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So I feel like it's kind of
Artistic family.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
In the blood, in the roots,
Yes.
DNA. Yeah.
And of course, life happens, so it falls by the wayside.
It does.
I wanted to go to art school when I graduated high school. I was instructed to find something more reasonable,
More stable. You can depend on income.
So that would get you a real job.
Yeah, real job. Yeah, we've all heard that.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll become an architect.
What is a real job?
Right. So I went to school for architecture. I failed miserably.
I thought about doing that early on. I think my mom kind of encouraged me because I was artistic,
Right.
and I thought, architecture.
Let me tell you, that was a monster.
Yeah.
So I just totally felt like, this isn't for me. Maybe it was just a kid's dream or whatever. But in my adulthood, I went to a retreat and we had an activity, some adult coloring. and it just woke up this sleeping beast.
Oh, wow.
And I began writing again. Um, and I began playing around with brush, with acrylic. So
Okay.
started painting, started writing, and then writing kind of tapered off. Um, so then I got into acrylics, got into fluid acrylics, paint pouring.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
I've experimented a little bit with that. It is so different.
It
and
is
unique. I like it. It's
It is.
fun.
And what I love about art is with anything fluid, you don't have as much control as you think you do.
That's right.
And
That's right.
when you're a control freak, at first it's like,
Mm-hmm.
but then you see it as a challenge.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, let's see what it feels like to let go.
Go with the flow.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. No pun intended.
Right.
So I really embraced fluid acrylic. And then that led to me discovering resin by accident.
And you showed me some of your beautiful work.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's the perfect mix of art and science because there's such a you have to be so specific with it. Temperature, environment, measure, all that good stuff. So yeah, I've been working with epoxy resin for I think 4 years now.
4? Wow.
4 years. And it started out as just a top coat for some of my artwork. I went down the rabbit hole, just self-taught, just learning how to mix pigments, all the good stuff. And I started just like making simple stuff, dominoes, clocks, just the little things. And people just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So that's where the 567 Center. I got a message from Jamie. She was in charge of scheduling classes at the time, and she invited me to the first annual All Hands Festival, which I think now is in its 4th year.
Wow.
So I was like, sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, how'd you find me? And it was just like, that's when I was actually sharing my stuff on social media more, which I need to get back to.
Right.
But I was just like, how'd you find me to invite me? I was just shocked. So that's how I got acquainted with Triangle, because the first festival was right here at Triangle Arts. And I met Rick. I met all these amazing artists, and I felt like, wow, I have found my people. Which is crazy because I'm here in Macon more than I am in my hometown. I'm from Milledgeville.
Okay.
Born and raised in Milledgeville.
Okay.
Living in Atlanta for some time, moved back home.
Do you live in Milledgeville?
I do. I commute every day.
Okay.
When you live in Milledgeville, you just used to you got to drive to get somewhere. So it just, because I'm in Macon most times for work, the after work just began to naturally develop. So I just found like my people, different artists here, kindred spirits, and again finding Triangle.
It's amazing that when you are getting into art, and maybe you're an established artist or whatever, and I'm just kind of speaking from my experience, you find out how much you have in common.
Absolutely.
You may not use the same medium, but there's a lot of things that you do have in common. And as artists, we see things different. It's amazing how I start driving down the road, and I see a scene, and I'm thinking about the colors. Oh, I see a little yellow ochre in that, or I see a little burnt umber in that. Of course, artists out there that are watching this, and other people that are watching it, know what those colors are, but the average person doesn't.
That's
And my sister-in-law even made a comment one time. She said, "I bet you see colors different now." And I said, "Yeah, I do."
Yes.
You do, but yet you gain an appreciation for what the artist has to go through to create their art. A lot of people, they see a piece and they don't know what goes on behind the scenes to create that piece, right?
That's so
like,
true.
oh, well, my child could paint that. Well, no, probably not. Because some artists, and I do this sometimes, is I build a stretcher bars, I stretch the canvas, I gesso the canvas, I do all that stuff. and then there's a process to go through before I even start applying the paint to it. So, and you're probably that way too, because you have to think about what is this piece I'm going to create? What materials do I need? How am I going to use the router to cut things out? I got to
Yes.
draw it out, spec it out. Hours have gone into it before you actually start pouring and doing something. So
That's right.
but yet, when you're an artist, you can kind of relate to the struggles and trials and experiments and things that artists go through. So yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
that connection there.
It does. And it's not just the physical with the creation and the preparation and the research. It's even an emotional and
Yeah.
a mental.
Right.
Right. A lot of art is birthed out of just cleansing the palette of reality. That was something for me. I needed something outside of the regular world.
Right.
So art was an escape for me. And yes, just when you are able to talk to people who understand, yeah, you can't just whip out a brush or whip out, whatever and just create. You have to be in a certain mind state, a certain physical space.
Right.
Even with resin, I love pouring resin, but I know that I have to devote at least an hour and a half to just preparing, being able to mix and work with that in a time frame because it's time sensitive to work with that. So it's to explain that to, if for lack of a better term, the average person, it's like, oh really? Oh yeah. But to relate that to an artist, they're like, oh yeah, and so
because they have a process that they can relate. It might be different because you, like I said, you might be using a different medium. But let's say you're doing acrylic pouring. Yeah, what colors am I going to use? I want 30% of this, and 25% of this, or 50% of that, or whatever. And I get it together, and these are the colors I want to use, and this is hopefully I want to try to get it to flow and all that kind of stuff and everything. And yeah, there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. But yeah, you can relate. Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of similar to what I might do with X or whatever.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
Definitely creates community.
It does. And I think that's why there's such a great artist community, is because we can relate so much with each other. Because you're right, there's passion that goes into it, because you could be really passionate about painting a certain subject matter or creating something, because that's what your specialty is or niche is or whatever. So
That's right.
and then as you develop that, you become recognized for that, in the art world.
Yes.
So yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And that, if speaking of that, how you're known in the art world, that's another journey that I feel like as artists go through as well, is kind of finding yourself. Like, what is my signature move, so to speak? At first it was making, like I said, just kind of making pieces and things like that. I moved from more canvas work to more functional art. My desire is to move back into the more aesthetics of it, but there's more of a demand, so to speak, for the functional, and you're kind of torn in between the two.
Right.
But again, it's about finding the space that you fit into. I love both, but you just had to learn how to dance with that.
Yeah.
And it's and that's, it just brings an awareness to yourself. Like, what is it that I'm trying to convey? What's speaking to me? What do I want to share or convey to someone else? How do I want to resonate to with someone else? So it's definitely it's learning yourself. And I will say that with art, I've learned a great deal about myself that I don't know if I would have learned.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of hit on something. You talked a little bit about this, and the creativity, what you might be feeling or experiencing on the inside, and that can come out into a piece of art. We talked in an interview with Rick earlier about a local artist, Rhonda Miller, And a lot of her art is, some of it's self-portraits, but it's what she's experiencing at the time, and emotions that she might be feeling and things that might be going on with her mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually or whatever. I want to get to that point. I'm not there yet.
Same.
So I
Same.
admire people that, how are they so creative? One thing that I kind of struggle with too, and this is an interview with you, but I'll just share this. But one of the things that I struggle with and I admire, because I'm in all kinds of Facebook groups. There's Facebook groups out there, guys. If you're watching this and you want photo references, there's Facebook groups where it's free photo references for painters. They'll photographers will put stuff out there, and it's free that you can use it. However, but the thing that amazes me is they'll take this photo and they'll create something from it. And I'm a landscape kind of guy, but it's like, oh my gosh, look at the colors they used in the sky. They changed the watercolor. They did it's like, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right.
How did they see that? Is it something mentally, or is it just they've done it for so long, they know how to experiment a little bit and try things different? And maybe that's what I need to do. And this is therapeutic for me, having this interview and talking a little bit with you is that, and hopefully it helps, other artists and other people out there, is that we do have to experiment a little bit with certain things.
Absolutely.
And as I mentioned earlier, I've experimented a little bit with acrylic pouring, but I've also started experimenting a little bit with, adding some material to acrylic paint, to thicken it up and
texture.
Texture. That's the word I'm looking for. The texture, adding some texture out there and everything. And it's like, oh my gosh, that is so neat. Instead of a flat, just, painting, but it's actually, well, it actually looks like foam from the waves, on the shore. I mean, it's just, experimenting. But I think that's key. And I appreciate you sharing some things that kind of made me think about that, is stepping outside that comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And that can be a struggle for artists.
It absolutely is. Yeah. There are two things that I struggle with. It's abstract and as a technique, and watercolor as a medium.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
And maybe it's because I started with acrylic, and I've worked with oil before. Yeah. It has a bit of the same flow, but gouache is a little bit of
I've experimented a little bit with gouache.
Yeah. But watercolor, you're working from a different order of things, so it's just like it boggles the mind. And an abstract, I'm such a perfectionist. So when I'm painting, I started with I don't say landscapes, but like seascapes. I used to jokingly say, until I get to the beach, I'll just paint them.
Yeah.
And and I broke out of the usual blue, green, tan palette.
Right.
Did like orange, purple, just different color schemes.
Right.
That was a challenge. But going from that exact, I know exactly what this is when you're looking at it, to going to something that's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's this. And, you got to try to explain yourself to someone.
Right.
It's such a challenge to me to do abstract. So, you definitely, you don't have to step outside the box.
Right.
But I feel like if you don't, you're missing out on a great experience.
Right. And there's so much you can learn from it, and it could help you with whatever medium that you might specialize in or focus on, because and we talked about this last week. I like oils, but I've done a little bit with acrylic and other stuff in gouache, but I've talked to some artists, watercolor artists, and I want to learn how to do it, but you're right. It's a different mindset. There's no white in watercolor.
That's right.
It's the material that you're painting on. If it's white, then okay, you leverage that, in some way. And it's like, I don't know that I could do that. I'd have to sit with somebody and watch them and have them teach me, and just because I'm a learner by observing.
Yes.
You can tell me, and it's like, it goes over my head, but I've got to watch you sketch it out, paint it out. I'm using this, and that's why sometimes I watch tutorials. if the guy's just painting, that's a waste of my time. If he's not telling me,
That's
or
right.
she or he, if they are not telling me what they're
Sharing
doing,
the process.
I'm going to use this particular brush, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to apply the paint this way, and I'm going to use the side, and I'm going to just, because I'm not picking up on just seeing it.
Right.
I need that instruction too,
Right.
but I just don't want somebody to just, do a willy-nilly painting. If I'm going to pay money for it, I want somebody to instruct me.
That's right.
Because I can just watch it on YouTube and turn the sound off.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So why pay money to have? Because I've done this. No offense to any artist out there or any that I purchased videos from. I've asked for my money back because I sent them an email and said, "Hey, I'm not happy." They just stood there and painted for 15 minutes and didn't say a word.
That's right.
And if it's a tutorial, to me, I'm teaching you something. I'm talking about it. I'm explaining to you what I'm doing and why I'm mixing this color.
Right.
If I'm not getting that, it's not beneficial to me.
That's
So,
right.
Heads up out there, those that are creating content, to sell. But anyway,
Right. And speaking of that, because in addition to artwork, I teach.
You teach too, yeah, because you taught some classes, yeah.
Yeah, and again, shout out to 567 Center after that festival. A couple of months later, they asked me, would you be interested in teaching resin classes? I was like,
Sure thing.
Yeah. So with that, and I'll share with you what I've had some of the students share with me. They have said things like, your personality comes out with this. It helps it be more palatable. You're and this is not my words, so no offense to anyone who made this. If this strikes you, you're not one of those pretentious artists, like holier than thou or perfectionist kind of thing. So
my way or no way.
Right. Yeah. So I appreciated that feedback. That let me know, hey, keep doing.
I bet you're an excellent teacher because you have that personality. You're kind of easygoing. It's like, let me show you something you could do, maybe a little different or whatever, but you're not going to be just
overbearing.
And the times that we've talked, and you're there to help them, not so much. And you're going to provide some feedback. And I hate to use the word critique because it sounds criticism.
Right.
Because you don't want to criticize anybody that's trying to learn.
I think, I will say this, the bottom of the barrel for me is critique. Now, definitely feedback, definitely instruction. And because resin, until it cures, there is still motion with it. It can kind of move before it gets, firm and settles. I don't even critique because I'm like, let's see what it looks like when it dries, when it cures. Right. And I don't. I just see. I'm one of those people that sees every baby as beautiful.
Yeah.
There's some
in their own way.
And right, exactly. Right. But every baby to me is beautiful. Yeah. So every piece of art that I see that my students create, I see a beauty in it. Even if it's trash, if they messed it up or whatever, the beauty is the lesson. Like next time you do this, you'll know what to do to bring out the results you want.
What did you learn from this process?
Right.
Or how could you do something different next time? I love that approach. That is the approach that a lot of, and I've taken some art lessons and stuff, and I appreciate an instructor or a teacher that has that philosophy of teaching, and trying to find, okay, well, what do you think you could do differently next time? Or here's some things that you might try.
Exactly.
What is it you like about it? What is it you don't like about it?
You just don't want to discourage someone from that.
It's the same thing that you need to do as an artist. When you create a piece, every piece that you paint, and I'm speaking from, the painting side, is not going to be a masterpiece.
That's right.
And you might paint 10 paintings and one or two turned out, man, I nailed it, And I used to think that was just me. But then I watched some other artists that have been doing it for 30 years. And it's like, you know, you gotta go through a bunch of paintings, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I nailed it on that one.
Gotta
You
kiss a
know,
bunch of frogs to get to a
and
prince.
that's
That's right.
yeah. And what did I learn, or what? Should have done that a little different. I did that recently. I've started doing little 6 by 8 inch panels. I cut the MDF board, I gessoed them, all that kind of stuff, and they're just doing little practice things and studies that I thought, hey, I might do something different. And I painted one, and I thought, I might want to do a bigger one of this one. And then I was looking at my photo reference, and I was looking at what I did, and I don't like it. I just left it. The next day I come up and say, I don't know what I need to do. And I did it, and I said, oh wow, that improved it so much. Is it perfect? No, but it's better than it was. But you have to step away from it. You know,
you have to step away, and you have to learn how to stop, because you can overwork a piece till it's dead.
Yeah, and it's worse and worse, and it's just getting like trash.
And you get frustrated, and you're like, I don't want to do this. Yeah, absolutely.
Lessons learned. Yes, step away.
And another thing too, we are, of course, most times people are more critical of themselves. There have been times and pieces I've created, and I'm like, oh, that's bored. That's trash. I don't like it. And somebody will love it.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
really?
Which turns me into a hoarder, because then I'm like, I don't want to throw this away. Somebody might like it, but
I know. But you talked about the babies, and you find beauty in babies, and they're a beautiful creation, right? Art, they say beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, right? Well, art lies in the eye of the beholder. What some people consider art, another person might not consider art.
That's right.
And I was talking to an artist recently about art, and the same kind of thing. And it's like, well, two people can be standing there and they can be looking at the same painting, and it's a piece of crap. What? And the other person, what? Don't you see how they were using this color to express? It spoke to them, this one person, but it didn't speak to the other person.
That's right.
So you never know. So it's, guys, folks, create your art.
Do it.
Just do it. Be creative.
Yes.
Tap into whatever energy you need to get in that mindset. And you probably do this, and I try to do this. It's just, okay, I'm going into the studio. Let's clear the mind. Let's tap into that creative juices, and boom. I like to go on walks in the morning to kind of get some fresh air, about 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Okay, heart's racing, pumping. All right, now let's go up to the studio and let's do some art.
That's goals for me. That's goals.
Yeah.
I normally come into the studio after a work day. And I don't know, I already have what's on my mind like throughout the day. So it's almost, I would say, like I'm meditating on what I'm going to do. So once I get there,
it's percolating in there, right?
Yeah. So it comes out, and depending on how I meditate on it is how it comes out.
Right.
So if I have a stressful day, it'll be a bit of a challenge.
Right.
If I focus correctly, it'll come out just right. Or it's definitely a barometer for the emotion or the mentals that's going on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to share with our viewing audience or listening audience out there about who you are and what's going on with your art journey?
Well, I started out, I'm here at Triangle. I started out as a tenant here, resident artist here, and outgrew my space. And as I outgrew my space, the need of Triangle kind of increased as well. So needed someone to manage the property. So now I'm the property manager.
There you are.
So not only do I make sure that the studio spaces are rented out, make sure the tenants have what they need, be available to them. Also visitors, which like Victor.
Like I came up.
Oh man.
I mean, I was just overwhelmed. You're just like, yeah, come on, let's show you around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like open
awesome.
house. Yeah.
Perfect.
So love visitors coming through. My goal for Triangle is to make it the creative hub um, that it is for the artists, also for the general public, not only for artists but for patrons.
Right.
So
Right.
definitely a process when you're juggling a lot of
Right.
things, but that is the goal. And um, I appreciate, like for you, Victor, I appreciate you for bringing some ideas to the table.
Yes.
I never
Yeah.
claim an idea if it's not mine. And even if it is mine, I don't toot my own horn about it. So thanks to those who have visited and have given me ideas for having like artist nights for artists to come and just commune and just chill and do their thing. We do have a holiday market that will be in the works. We had one for the spring.
So you got one coming up maybe this fall?
Yes, this fall.
Okay.
It'll be like a holiday market, so be on the lookout for that. And you're, I know with the last interview with Rick, you're going to have in the show notes how to get in touch with us.
Yes.
If you can do that on this as well.
I will. Yeah.
That'll be great.
You can just email me that information, what you want in there. I can put email addresses, dates, and times, places, whatever.
Excellent.
And I'll just put that in the description show notes of the video.
Thank you. Good. Perfect. Yep. And that'll be it. So no, just the artist just juggling.
Yeah.
I ain't no clown, no.
Yeah. Definitely not. But thank you so much, Melissa. It's been an awesome pleasure getting to know you better, and just wish you the best in your endeavor and your art journey and everything. But thanks folks for tuning in. I mean, this has been a great interview. More to come because there's other artists down here, and she's already talked to several of them. I'd love to have them on the podcast as well, because as I may have mentioned in this podcast, I think I did in the one with Rick, is that's the whole purpose of this particular podcast. Is there's so many artists in the Middle Georgia area. When I say Middle Georgia, Millersville, Forsyth, Warner Robins, Perry, Macon, of course, but it's not just Macon. Okay. And so we're just trying to give people more exposure to find out about places like this, what artists are here, and to help them and to talk about different ideas. And we talked about this too, and closing here real quick, but having panels where artists can come together and just kind of talk about, well, what do you struggle with, or how can we get in a gallery, and maybe talk to a gallery owner and interview them and that kind of thing. And I've had Julie Wilkerson, from Macon Arts Alliance on the show and everything. In fact, she was like the second person I interviewed, and it was a great interview. I really like Julie. She does a lot to help promote art in the Middle Georgia area, and I know that there's a lot of things that are going on. But one thing too about getting in a gallery, folks, is it may be 6 months before you can get in there because they're booked. They've got things going on. So if you go talk to somebody, a gallery owner, don't expect them to say, okay, we'll bring your pieces down here next week and we'll set, because they've got things lined up. So the sooner you get out there and talk to somebody, the better. But then I think, too, it might be good to get artists together to talk about what works, what doesn't work, social media, things like that. So, that may be something we could do in the future. But anyway, thanks, guys. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to help the channel grow. Send this to your friends, coworkers, family, fellow artists, and everything. Check back later. We're going to have more content created and published out there. But take care, everybody, and we'll see you in the next episode.